The Mark Rober versus Tesla drama is intensifying. Tesla stock down about $50 billion at the time of this recording, down 6.41% at the moment of this recording, while at the same time, the company that was promoting LiDAR products in Mark Rober's video is up 17%. Now, mind you, much smaller company, but still worth around $30 million of market share increase. We have a lot to talk about in this video. A response from Mark Rober, a response from Luminar, and what do we think about the financials of Luminar? Is it a stock to pay attention to, or what are the risk factors on that one? Well, let's get into all of it, but first, we have to start with why did they edit an iPhone out to show a Google phone? This is a little odd, but this was part of the Mark Rober video yesterday as well, and it wasn't mentioned by me yesterday. I didn't think of it as majorly significant, but it is worth mentioning. This is the image we see as a still frame in the actual video, where you could see a Google Pixel phone center here with the Google logo upright and 2 lens camera, but for some reason, this is actually just an edited in representation of the phone that was actually used, given that the reflection that you get in not only the LiDAR imaging, but also the glass reflection of the Tesla center console is a 3-lensed iPhone with the Apple logo, leading a lot of people to raise questions around, where has integrity gone in editing or journalism, if you will? Mostly because there is this understanding that T-Mobile and Pixel partnered with Mark Rober. So a lot of folks are wondering, hey, like, does the world really just only revolve around money and sponsorships and partnerships? Well, good news. No sponsorships or partnerships or pitches in this video, just facts and detail. Like, how interesting. Yesterday, I mentioned that Luminar brilliantly disappeared. In fact, I wrote that in my caption here. Luminar brilliantly disappears. I talked about how Luminar was really good at washing their hands of being involved in the Tesla tests, probably because they didn't want to endorse the way Mark Rober was doing the tests, especially since Mark didn't use full self-driving. Tesla's latest and greatest, most advanced available self-driving-ish technology. Why would you use a lesser technology for your tests? We still haven't gotten an answer on that. But what we do know is the one thing that Luminar did to tie themselves to Mark was they put a banner across their website saying Luminar LiDAR tested by former NASA Apple engineer and current YouTuber Mark Rober. And they linked the YouTube video, which I spoke with an attorney about this, and they argued that because Luminar links to Mark's video, they're basically endorsing Mark's video. And that clever hand washing they were doing, they may have just gotten a little bit more dirt mixed in, which isn't good. But Luminar may have realized the liability that they may have even slightly gotten themselves exposed to, because that message is now gone. No more reference to Mark's video. It could be because of social media backlash, or it could be because of liability concerns. There's also a lot of talk around what kind of legal liabilities Mark Rober could be exposed to, and we talk about the Lanham Act in this video, which is very different than people just sharing an opinion online, because you or I as individual people can share an opinion all we want. But when a business is cooperating with another business to defame another business, that's where the Lanham Act and defraud or false advertising comes in. This is a tort claim. This is very, very different than sort of a, oh, you know, that person called me a liar or whatever. People do that all the time. Everybody has their own personal opinions. Businesses are held to a higher standard, hence why that law exists and why Mark actually has serious legal liability. I spoke with my son about this, and now I'm going to get into the financials and some other details as well, but I spoke with my 9-year-old who's a fan of Mark, and his opinion was Mark should do another test. Like Mark is known for testing. Why doesn't he do a fair test of the Tesla full self-driving against this, you know, Wile E. Coyote wall? that would potentially be a way of redeeming himself, especially since it also appears that now there's this dug-up post from 2020 showing Mark Roper suggesting, hey, thanks to the 600,000 individual donors from 191 countries that helped with their, nonprofit here, and some help from my buddy Austin Russell for the final push. How interesting. Austin Russell for the final push, also known as the CEO of Luminar, the company whose valuation just increased by a good old $34 million. Now, it's a far cry from the $50 billion Apple. It's a far cry from the $50 billion that Tesla lost in market valuation today, but in fairness, there could be other aspects or reasons as to why Tesla's valuation is falling today. For example, here's a poster on X who says, they go by Markets and Mayhem, I guess. JP Morgan expects Tesla to report its worst quarterly deliveries in 3 years. We struggle to think of anything similar in history of the automotive industry in which a brand has lost so much value so quickly. Now, this is JP Morgan's argument, and some people anti-Tesla are like, that's right, screw you, Tesla, and people on the other side are like, nah, man, now they're opening their base to more right-inclined voters and right-leaning voters, and they might pick up the slack and buy those Teslas. Whatever. This video isn't about that. It's actually about some more facts and numbers, such as Mark Roper's response, which we see right here. Mark, on his X, says, here's the raw footage of my Tesla going through the wall. Not sure why it disengages 17 frames before hitting the wall, but my feet weren't touching the brakes or the gas. And if we look closely, we can see the full acceleration here, and you'll be able to see that there isn't any indication of braking or brake lights that occur on the vehicle. I'll go ahead and play it in full here. But what I want you to pay attention to, as we froze this yesterday and went through it frame by frame, is that autopilot for some reason does disengage right before hitting the wall, and Mark seems equally confused by this. Again, of course, people question, Mark, well, why weren't you using FSD? But, okay, whatever. Because in fairness, there are arguments on both sides here. One, A, you didn't use FSD. Two, or B, why did you turn on autopilot so late? It's like you barely gave it a chance to actually take in its surroundings, so to speak. And then, of course, on the other hand, people say, maybe Tesla's at fault here. Maybe there's a bug in Tesla's autopilot software. And we're going to dive into that in just a moment, but pay close attention here. All right, autopilot gets enabled here. Was that about 4 or 5 seconds before? That's less. See, he actually fails to enable it there.
Holy shit!
So you can actually see autopilot disappear. Well, first of all, Mark struggles to turn it on. Look at the struggle to get it on here. So for some reason, he struggles to actually turn it on. I wonder if autopilot, I really wish I could read what the warning was as to why autopilot was struggling to turn on. Who knows, maybe it was recognizing there was some form of issue. But you'll notice here, we're 8 seconds into this clip, and the impact occurs at right about here, 13 seconds. So within 5 seconds of engaging autopilot is when the impact occurs. And usually, if autopilot is on within 5 seconds of an impact, it's considered an autopilot-related accident. This was right on the line, like the last second it could have possibly been turned on to start functioning. Not sure how much that matters because technically the camera should be running in the background anyway, prepared to turn on. It's not like the camera should need 5 seconds to boot up to start functioning. But what's more important here is that take a look closely here. As we get and approach the wall, we saw this in the freeze frames yesterday, we see that rainbow road disappear. Now, why is that rainbow road disappearing? We have the same message up from before, so it's not like there's a new message. There's also no emergency braking. There's no please hurry and stop warning. There's nothing. All we get is, and it doesn't look like Mark is doing anything. We don't see brake lights popping onto the Tesla here, right? If he tapped the brakes, it would take over. Maybe if he turned the wheel too rapidly, it would turn off autopilot. But we don't see that. We don't see a brake tap here. All we see is autopilot just disappear into the background. And this leaves a lot of people wondering, wait a second, is this actually more of a potential Tesla flaw than a Mark Rober flaw? Well, this is where we can actually look to some precedent on this has actually occurred in a way that the NHTSA has discovered oopsie doopsies around this. Take a look at this. So this is the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration argues in a report that as they investigated 16 crashes on average in these crashes where Tesla's autopilot features were on and the car ended up hitting a stationary vehicle, of those 16 crashes on average, autopilot was running, but quote, aborted vehicle control less than 1 second prior to its first impact. Wow. Well, that somewhat shifts the scales here for a moment, because remember, Mark Rober promised that he would use autopilot for the remaining tests, and then there was a large concern over, wait a minute, like, why was it off before the test? Did you do multiple takes? Like, was this disingenuous? Or was it a Tesla problem? See, now all of a sudden the story goes a lot deeper, especially since the NHTSA has some form of precedent of noticing this similar issue. Now, this doesn't absolve why there was a child standing behind the wall for added drama effect, which felt like a Tesla smear. It doesn't solve why you didn't spend the $99 for a 1-month subscription to have access to full self-driving technology. It doesn't resolve some of those unearthed issues, but it does potentially explain why Mark seems just as confused. Oh, sorry, that's the We Did It post. Let's go find the last post of Mark's. There we go. We'll live refresh that. There we go. Here's the raw footage of my Tesla going through the wall. Not sure why it disengages 17 frames before hitting the wall, but my feet weren't touching the brakes or the gas. Now, I talked to my son about this, and I agree with him. We find that Mark's confusion is potentially credible here. Looking at the video and aligning us with the NHTSA, it seems likely that there is true confusion here. Again, it doesn't solve other issues of the test, but there does seem to be some real confusion here. And this is going to be something that Tesla probably needs to address. Again, doesn't solve the problem in terms of why we didn't use FSD, but let's talk about Luminar as a company for a moment, because was there potentially this upcoming knowledge that they wanted to pump their stock right before their earnings? Note that the company reports earnings on March 20th. Today's the 17th. So in just a few days, Luminar is going to report earnings. And if you look at this chart, which is the 1-hour chart, this jump of 18% looks really successful, but that success really fades away quite literally when you go out to the day chart, or worse, the week chart. You can see this had a lot of COVID 2020 enthusiasm. You'll see that the stock went up to $717 per share, which is misleading because they did a reverse split. I think it was either a 10-for-1 or 12-for-1, so it never actually got that high. They did a reverse split because they received a delisting notice from NASDAQ. NASDAQ basically said, hey, your all stock is sucking so frickin' badly, y'all need to fix it. So they conducted a reverse split, and now, their stock is trading for $5-6, and they're up 18% just before earnings here. Now, something to know beyond this has to do with the financials of Luminar. And remember, my goal isn't to try to take sides here. I want to provide you as much unbiased information as possible, so ultimately you can make your own decision. You could make your decisions about Mark, about Tesla, demands for follow-up videos or tests, or how Tesla should respond. I personally think it'd be kind of cool if they did some kind of FSD partnership and came up with some sort of positive solution. They did a Mark and Luminar test, do a Tesla and Mark test, though. I don't know. Maybe the relationship would be too bitter as a result of this test for that to happen. So when we actually look at the financials of this company, it's worth remembering they report earnings in 3 days, so a lot of these numbers are going to change rapidly. But there are definitely some weird things in here, such as the company in a 9-month period is losing less money than they used to lose, which is good. They used to lose $422 million in a 9-month period. Now they're losing about $228 million in a 9-month period, which works out to about $71 million of loss per quarter. That's going to become really important when we look at their balance sheet. So just remember, they lose about $71 million per quarter So every 3 months, $71 million are going out the door. To put that a little bit more clearly, every single day, they lose about $788,000. So if you've ever wanted, a home that was like a nice 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath with a pool and it cost $780,000, they burn one of those up and the land somehow every single day. Anyway, in addition to their actual net losses from operations, they're writing down inventory. They've been writing down inventory in 23, they've done it in 24. Usually this occurs as a product becomes obsolete because they came out with a new and better product, or it's just aging because they failed to sell it. Not entirely clear what the case is here, but it is interesting. They've spent money, but in 23, they spent about $12 billion to acquire Seagate, the hard drive company, their LiDAR business, which to me is just a sign that Seagate bailed. And the way this company finances a lot of their work is through selling stock, so basically diluting shareholders for a money-losing business, or issuing debt. Now, I'm generally okay with businesses that are making money issuing stock because usually when they issue $100 worth of stock, they can make money with it, right? Like, let's say are a real estate company, you're going to issue $100 worth of stock, but you turn that into $120 or $130 worth of real estate, everybody wins in that case. But in this case, it's quite the opposite. Every $100 of stock you issue, you're losing all of it and more. So, and that's because you don't have a profitable business. Now, this is skewy, but in their last quarterly report, they say they had a positive net income. But the only reason they had a positive net income is because they took a $147 million, quote, gain on extinguishment of debt. If you actually look at their business, this is a business that has $15 million of money coming into it. Okay, so imagine this. Imagine that you had a lemonade stand and you sold $15 worth of lemonades. How much did it cost you to sell that or run that lemonade stand? Well, to sell the lemons, it cost you $29. See right here, $29 million. So you got $15, but it cost you $29 to buy the lemons. And then to run the business from your home office or whatever, it cost you another $100 to run the lemonade business. So while you felt good about selling $15 worth of lemonade, you actually ended up with losses from operations of about $115. In this case, $115 million in just 3 months. Not a very sustainable business model, especially since you're propping it up with funny, arcane accounting to make it seem like you're profitable in the quarter, right as you do this partnership with Mark Rober. Interesting math. But it's not just that. It's worth noting that they have massive customer concentration, which creates some real risks as well. If you go to page 34 to 36 in their last financial filings, you'll find a few things. First, you'll see that one customer accounted for 48% of the company's revenue in the 9 months ending September 30th, 2024. And then 3 other customers accounted for 32, 14, and 14%. That's for the 3 months ending in September 30th. So you could look at this. The point is they have customer concentration. If one customer bails, they make a whole lot less money. But it's not just that. One of the big partnerships that they have with Volvo, which is an upside to the company, and a lot of people are excited about this partnership in Volvo, just started facing a whole new set of uncertainties. Now, you should be able to figure this one out yourself. I'll give you the answer, but I'm going to read this one to you, and I want you to, the first thing that pops into your mind here is probably going to be right. You ready for this? We announced our start of production for Volvo cars at the manufacturing facility in Mexico in April of 2024 and began shipping production LiDAR sensors for the Volvo EX90, with yields continuously improving throughout 2024. Okay, so we're going to sell cars with our product made in Mexico. What could a potential problem be with that thesis? Oh, I don't know. Trump tariffs? Anyway, so look, this is a very interesting what all is going on here. You have a company that is losing money hand over fist. They don't know how to run a lemonade stand, but they have this thesis that LiDAR is the future. And a lot of people argue that maybe LiDAR is the future. Now, is it Luminar as a company? Maybe not. Maybe they haven't figured it out. Other people argue, hey, look, if you can't see through the fog as a person, why should the car be expected to see through the fog? A full self-driving car that can't see should just pull over, just like a human. Do you really need LiDAR to be able to drive through fog that you couldn't see through otherwise? And then, of course, there are arguments that the type of fog that Luminar used is favorable to LiDAR technology, whereas real fog isn't favorable to LiDAR technology, and LiDAR technology wouldn't work anyway. It's worth noting that Volvo they're installing this technology onto is an $80,000 vehicle. It's a premium SUV or luxury SUV. And so you really have to scratch your head there and say, okay, what's better? Full self-driving that's 99% perfect but accessible to everyone? Or full self-driving that's only accessible to 5% of people or 10% of people and it is more perfect, like 99.5% perfect. I don't know, make that up. That's going to be something that society will have to sort of evaluate as we go towards the future of self-driving cars. But I have to say, you've got some very interesting data sets that have come out just in the last 24 hours here. Some real, still no answers as to why they didn't test full self-driving in the Mark Rober video. No answers as to why all of a sudden they had to edit what appears to be an iPhone that they used to video into a Google and then did a bad job editing it, which kind of is like a stealth and free advertisement for Apple, which is kind of cool. People are also wondering if Disney is going to do anything. I would argue no, because too many children like Mark, and children are going to see past this, and I don't blame that at all. But Luminar is an interesting one because it's running today on enthusiasm, on sort of this media attention and earnings coming up. But are its earnings actually going to be any different from what we've previously seen? Worth paying attention to. The trend of the stock isn't exactly the best, and clearly there's some friendship between the CEO of this company and Mark. But in addition to that, we've got to find out, hey, what's Tesla's stance on this? Because they just evaporated $50 billion of market value. Maybe we should ask the CEO whenever he's done with his work in the White House.